Hello everyone. Okay, so this is a different video because I'm doing it when I'm making dinner. So we'll see how that goes. So there's something I wanted to talk about, because I don't really see it being talked about all that much. Like, not this angle of the topic anyway. And essentially, it's about the modern, I don't really want to use the word privilege, but essentially it's a privilege. The modern privilege that we as gamers have when it comes to game development and developers themselves. So essentially the point is, these days, when a game goes gold, which means it's certified, it's essentially finished, it's on a disc, which is interesting because not all games use disc, some of them are digital. Not the point. When a game goes gold, and then when it eventually releases, it's not uncommon for games in this sort of day and age to have what we call a day one patch. And essentially what that is it's like you make the product and you give it to the consumers, and the consumers use the product, and then they essentially work as like after development bug testers, which is pretty strange. I'm sure there's some really good reason for it, but essentially what happens is that the community then finds all these things that are wrong with the game or a little bit broken, and then they take that information either through customer support, customer service, to inform the developers, or they do it online via just social media, voicing concerns, and they let the developers know, and then the developers will go and fix those things. So the day one patch is one thing, but then on top of that, you find a lot of the time, and it's most evident in games like No Man's Sky and Cyberpunk, and most recently, and the reason I'm making this video, is Dying Light 2. It's basically the community will have a finished product, more or less, and yeah, it might have some problems with it, it might have some bugs or whatever, but they will go through the game, finishing it multiple times, and they will just list tons of things that they think are not good about the game, like problems, whether they be because of the story or because of the gameplay, or like inherent problems with just the way it's made. Sometimes it's not even always just bugs and actual like issues that can be solved. And then they'll take this information, they'll just spread it like wildfire all online. And eventually, usually it doesn't take very long because of the age we live in, the developers will hear about this information. And then if enough people are saying the same thing, the developers will actually go and change parts of the game. Now, it's never happened on like a huge scale before. Then they're not going to go and like remove whole characters or levels or something, but they do a lot based on player feedback. And now I know in other service industry, like service-based industries, it's confusing because gaming is kind of a mix between both. It's a product-based industry because you've got the game that's a finished product that people have worked on and developed. It is essentially finished. And then you also have it as a service-based industry because even after a game is finished, there's updates, and there's DLC, and there's like extra content that gets added, and things like bug reporting and customer service and fixing problems, that kind of thing. So it's a bit of both. But in other service-based industries, if you have a problem with the way the product is made, you can tell the developer, the manufacturer, you can tell them that you have a problem with it, but they're not going to fix it because the product is done. You've bought it, you paid money for it. That's the end of that relationship, essentially. Maybe for the next product, they will take that feedback into account and change it up a bit. It's fascinating because back in the olden days of gaming, in like the early and late 90s, early 2000s kind of era of gaming, when social media wasn't this huge phenomenon that it is now, where you couldn't do that. The most you would get is somebody just thanking a developer for making a good game. And if you had a problem with it, well, okay, maybe it just wasn't the right game for you. Like, if you didn't like the story, you can't go and tell the developer, hey, you should change this, or you should add in a whole new cutscene because I feel like something's missing here. That wasn't happening. You couldn't do that. But now you can, and it's really strange. And I think people kind of forget that. Kind of forget that they're so privileged to be able to actually get online and talk, not face to face, but, talk to a developer of a product that they like. Product that they paid money for. And not only talk to them, but influence, in some way, their decisions. Influence things that will affect the product and what the consumer gets out of it. Now, while I'm pretty pro-consumer, I don't think that's a bad thing to be able to, want to make your customers, your consumers, your clients happy. Where do we draw the line with that kind of thing? So we take Cyberpunk, right? Essentially 100% broken. At launch, it was not really a finished game. I don't think anybody's arguing that point. It needed a lot of work. So day one patches, 100%. I get it. They ran out of time. They force-fed it to people way too soon. And there are problems because of that. So you have your day one patches, and it fixes some things. There's still a lot of other problems. But it didn't take long before people started to complain about not so much bugs, but content in the game. This shouldn't work this way. Why has this happened like that? Shouldn't there be more to the story, more dialogue? I want to be able to do this and this. And some of it, it was cut content that, they needed to add back in because at some point it existed, although arguably the vertical slice of a game or the proof of concept of a game is not indicative of a final product. Like devil's advocate, there was some content that possibly was in the game at one point and it was removed for whatever reason and people wanted it back. I understand that. But then there were other things where they were just saying, hey, I would like this game better if you made this decision, if you did this, added this thing in. And because CD Projekt Red was, rightfully so, being blasted to all hell in the entire industry, they didn't really have a choice but to listen. And not only listen, they had to put some of this stuff in action because they needed goodwill and they needed it fast. And so they just started changing a bunch of stuff in the game and added content that's not considered DLC, but it's like whole chunks of content they've just put in the game all of a sudden, including features after it's been shipped, after it's been finished. And the most recent example of this is with Dying Light 2, where you've had the whole debacle about the ending and about the grappling hook. I'm part of that community, and I think there's definitely an aspect of that where they've gone and changed things that really didn't need to be changed at all. And now the player feedback is going to have them change back again, which is not a bad thing, but crazy that we can do that. We can be like, hey, this change you made, it sucks, fix it. You work for us. And like I said, back in the day, if you get a game and there was something in the game you didn't like, you just had to deal with it. You'd already paid your money. That developer already got your money. And you played the game. Whether or not you got your money's worth of entertainment out of it didn't really matter. But I'm kind of curious what people's thoughts are on this whole situation and whether they think we have too much power as consumers. If we should just leave developers the hell alone to just, make the product they want to make, and if we don't like it, that's not their fault, that's our fault. Okay, maybe not fault, but you know what I mean. I don't know.